Hi everyone, this is Heather Lawton from the Flourish.Academy. This is episode 403. Today we are talking about purchasing your first domain name, or maybe you're switching your business and you need www.yourname.com. When selecting your name and your business name, I have 5 things that you may want to consider. I've been working with a couple of photographers over the past week on this, so it's kind of fresh in my mind. But the first question you want to ask yourself is, do you plan on using any version of your name, or do you wish to go with a fictitious name? Now, there are pros and cons to both of these. So years ago, when I started my business, I'm thinking this was probably 15 years ago, I read the book, The Brand Called You by Peter Montoya. And I distinctly remember, at least this is how I remember it. I'd have to go back and reread it. But I remember him talking about the difference between a personal brand and a corporate brand, or a brand with a fictitious name. So the gist of it was, it's easier for people to give money to a person than to a corporation. Therefore, if you are building a business around yourself, then most often it makes more sense for you to use some version of your name in your business rather than using a fictitious name. Now, the reason you would want to use a fictitious name, there are a couple of reasons, but one is that maybe ultimately you want to sell your business. So if you think that at some point you would like to grow your photography business and have associate shooters underneath of you with the potential for one of them to take it over someday, then obviously it makes more sense to have a fictitious name, because I'm Weddings by Heather, and when people call Weddings by Heather, guess who they want? They want Heather. So I wouldn't ever be able to sell that business. Now, from the beginning, I chose to use my name in all of my businesses. So I had Heather Lawton in photography, HJL photography. I was thinking about like photography or photos by Heather, but ultimately landed on the genre of weddings. So I went with Weddings by Heather, and I used my name because I wanted my brand to be very, very personal. Because I'm a photographer, I offer a service, I want to connect directly with my clients. So I didn't like the idea of having a different name that people were like, okay, there's the name of this business, but that's actually Heather, but wait, it's the same name. And to tell you the truth, I know a lot of you have fictitious names. I do not have a problem with that. But sometimes I have private mentoring clients that it literally takes me years to remember that this particular fictitious name actually goes along with that particular client, because it's kind of disconnected for me. So I do have a personal opinion on that, but I do not have a problem at all with you using a fictitious name. There are just things to consider. And question number 1, when you're starting your business, is am I going to use some version of my name, or am I going to use a fictitious name? That's number 1. Number 2, do you want to include the genre of photography in your name? As I just mentioned, Weddings by Heather. Obviously, I photograph weddings. Okay, wait a minute. Not so obvious, because I get a lot of calls from advertisers that wonder if I want to put an ad for my wedding planning services. So not obvious that Weddings by Heather is a photographer, I guess, unless they went to the website. But does it make sense for you to put some version of what you do in your name? Now, again, there are advantages and disadvantages to this. The advantage is that it's very niche, and niche is good, because I have always said you cannot be vanilla in a pumpkin spice world. So I know that there were clients that hired Weddings by Heather because I specialized in weddings. So that made sense for me. But if you're not sure if you want to stick with one particular genre, then obviously I wouldn't recommend putting that in your business name or in your domain name, because I sure have locked myself into a corner with that name, haven't I? I worked really hard to grow that brand, but if I decide that I want to photograph pets next week, I obviously cannot do it under the Weddings by Heather brand, which would be a shame, because then I would have to create an entirely new business. So it's something to consider. Is, do you want your business to grow and evolve with you? And if so, then maybe it does not make sense to put your genre of photography into your business name or into your .com. Now, the good news is that you can change and pivot on any of these things. You can buy new domain names, you can redirect. So none of this is like pouring concrete on your feet, but it's just something to consider. Okay, number 3. Could you easily deliver your domain name to someone on the phone or on the street? Would it be memorable, and would it be easy to spell? I know you understand what I'm talking about here, but some people still do it. They have really challenging names to spell. For instance, early on, I had heatherlawtonenphotography.com. How stupid was that? Nobody can spell Lahtinen. Nobody can even pronounce it, and therefore they wouldn't be able to tell their friends about it. So really, this is a twofold question. Is could you deliver it easily to someone on the street or on the phone, and then could they tell their friend? So could I say to someone, oh my gosh, I'm a wedding photographer, you're getting married, go to weddingsbyheather.com, I'm Heather, you know, we have a little bit of a giggle, and then they remember it, and they could deliver that to their friends. But there's no way they could say Heather Lahtinen Photography. They couldn't pronounce it, they couldn't say it. So you just have to think that through. I also would never recommend putting a special character in your domain name, because then you're constantly going to be saying things like weddings-by-heather.com, and then people are like, wait, is that a dash or an underline? And they're always going to screw it up. So you want to consider special characters, but you also want to consider if it makes sense to put your genre and how you deliver that to someone on the street. Is it easy to spell? Okay, number 4, how important is it to you that your .com match your business name? So I do know some people that really struggled to find a good domain name, so they kind of picked one, but their business name is something different. I'm not a fan of that. I'm not saying it can't work. I really just want my business name to be my domain name so that it's easy and simple for people to remember. That's my take on that. And then number 5, of course, is it available? So if you I go to GoDaddy. I use GoDaddy as my hosting and my registrar for all of my domains, of which I own many. I have a bit of a domain hoarding problem. I think that everyone should own theirname.com. Therefore, I own heatherlahtinen.com, craiglahtinen.com, Ella, Evan, you get it. I own all of those and variations of those, because what if someday one of my children wants to be, heaven forbid, in politics or something? They would need their name.com. So I think everybody should own their name.com. Okay, but it's getting harder and harder to find domain names, and sometimes you'll come up with something really good and maybe it's for sale for like $10,000. So it's one of those premium names. I've actually come across that, or it's just not available. So then you're trying to get really creative with, you know, different words, or the way you're making those words, or even the way you're spelling those words. So I know that some of you have photos in your name and you spell it with an F. And I think that's just challenging, because you're always going to have to spell that for people, again, over the phone and on the street. And then some people like to use the word pics or images, and to use the word portraits, or does studio make sense? How do you incorporate your name into that? You know, I'm a big believer in keeping this as simple and straightforward as possible, but of course you have to make sure that that domain name is available. So those are my 5 things that you should consider when grabbing your domain name. But relax, you can always change it, you can always pivot in a different direction, you can redirect it. So all those domain names that I own, they're actually all redirected somewhere. So for instance, I also own heatherjl.com because I thought it was really simple. It redirects to my personal YouTube channel. I think the last time I checked, I redirected, I better go check, heatherlahtinen.com to the Flourish.Academy, but it may be still redirected to Weddings by Heather, but I don't think so. But I just buy all these domain names and I redirect them elsewhere. Can you please leave a comment below and share with your friends and like? It would be really helpful. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe, but leave me a comment. Let me know, how did you come up with your domain name? Do you have any other tips or advice that might help other people? And I'll see you in the next video.